Let's do it.
Of course. I always have all these updates when I'm trying to go live. Don't knock that over. You ready?
Get away from me.
There's a party going on right. Ready? Good evening and welcome to another episode of Dana Being Dana. I am your host, Dana Michelle, to the college admission show with ethics, y'all. Ethically, clothes on, no bribes. We are here. I am so excited to have this panel of my good friends. And this is a good show because this is like family to me. These are people that I've known for a very, very long time. Really close friends of mine. Most of them I've went to school with, which is amazing. So please share the show, host a watch party. We are live on Facebook and IntellectualRadio.com. I see some of you guys already sharing. Thank you all so much. Because we are very excited about this. I think the college admissions process and all that it has to offer is very hot in the streets right now. People are talking about it due to Operation Varsity Blues. I've got the experts that I know in the field here tonight assembled to talk about it, and I'm so glad you all are here. We will be taking calls very shortly. I'll give you the number shortly. If you have questions and you want to join in, you can also hit us up on Dana Being Dana on Facebook. We are following along. We are following your questions. So please ask questions there. And we will also be answering the phone lines as soon as we open those up. Dana Being Dana is coming to Naperville Community Television. Yes. And these are some of the people who've been riding with me for a very, very long time. Lindsay is my Spelman sister. She has known me since college. Quincy, Tim, Raj, Reem, they've known me for a very long time. 3 out of 4 of them went to Morehouse, and they've been riding with me on this journey for a very, very long time. So I'm super excited that you guys are here with me. This is the penultimate show before our pilot launch. That's a big word, I know.
It is.
The pilot episode will be at 8. We're having a pilot watch party, 8 p.m. Thursday, May 16th. At Aurelio's in Naperville. My boy, DJ Cheech Beats, Morehouse, class of 98. He will be spinning. It's going to be a great time. We're doing an 80s, 90s party before we watch the pilot at 9 o'clock. So next week, please join us. Mark your calendars. Come out. We're going to have a great time. I want to thank all of my sponsors. Sandy Hernandez for my makeup. Jill Whitwer, personal stylist. Veronica's House of Glamour. She does my hair. Thank you. Ray Design Company, Janelle's Bling Things, social MVP, and SceneChicago.com. Before we introduce strategic admissions advice,
That's me.
I would like to introduce the rest of our panel. We'll start with you, Rod. Can you introduce yourself?
Okay.
And talk about just your connection to the college admission space?
Okay. My name is Roderick Walden, originally from Orlando, Florida. My connection is I'm a high school assistant principal. So I get kids poised, postured, and ready for college success.
Yes. And where'd you go to college?
I went to the one and only Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you being here. Quincy?
My name is Dr. Quincy Payton. I am Associate Vice President of Adler University. I've been in higher education for about 18 years.
18 years?
As an administrator and as faculty. And I've been involved with admission on and off throughout my career. We're talking about minority recruitment, general admissions, or testing. I've dealt with that in those areas.
And Quincy?
Yes.
Where did you attend college?
I went to the Morehouse College.
Yes,
Atlanta,
indeed.
Georgia.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Lindsay,
Yes, ma'am.
how are you, my sister?
I am very good. How
Hold
are you?
it down. Thank you so much for being here. Can you please introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you, Lindsay Renee.
Well, my name is Lindsay Hunter, and I am currently working in admission at a school in Atlanta, Georgia. But I have worked in admission and worked with higher education for the last 18 years, from recruitment to on the high school side, scholarship acquisition, and community-based organizations. So any way that a student can go to college, I have helped them over the last 18 years. So that's what it is.
Which is fantastic. And complete silence in the building.
Absolutely.
Lindsay, where did you go to college?
I went to the #1 historically Black college, which is Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes, baby. Absolutely. Lindsay is my hometown sister. She is my Spelman sister. She is my freshman classmate sister. We lived in the same hall.
Yeah.
Like 3 doors down.
Absolutely.
H8 Phi Beta.
AJ.
HH Phi Beta is in the building
Yeah.
all day. Shouts out to our Abby sisters for tuning in
Yes.
and sharing the video. Tim, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me
so
back.
much for being here. I appreciate you being here. Tim and Quincy, I think, have been on the show the most, with few exceptions. So thank you both for being here. Quincy, Tim, can you tell us how many times you've been on the show?
This is going to be my fifth time being on the show.
5 times.
This is 5 for me.
5-time
wow.
champion. How do I turn?
But I will say I live in Atlanta and he lives here, so I get the push.
That's exactly right. There you go.
Won't argue with
Will
that.
you introduce yourself? Because this is a topic that is well within your wheelhouse, and I appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Timothy Fields. I currently work at Emory University, where I've worked for the past 15 years. I've also kind of worked in higher education for the better part of the last 25 years in residential life, college athletics, worked with federal TRIO programs, and I also worked in academic support. So worked in several different areas. But currently I work at Emory University as Associate Dean of Undergraduate Admission.
And you wrote a book, right?
I did write a book.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So the book has nothing to do with admission, but it has everything to do about learning. It is called Lessons I Learned from Drinking. It is available at lessonsIlearnedfromdrinking.com, Amazon, and all book platforms. So if you want to, you can go get it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Tim is a recurring sponsor of Dana Being Dana, a true friend, somebody who has always believed in this journey since its inception. So I appreciate you, Tim. Please go pick up his book, Lessons I Learned from Drinking. Great book. We've had a lot of fun celebrating it and promoting it throughout the year and some change that we've been on the radio. So we continue to do that going forward. Last but not least, Shareem.
Thank you, Dana, for having me on the show. As you said, I've been a fan for a long, long time, so I'm going to relish my moment on being on the Dana Being Dana show for the college admissions with ethics. My name is Shareem Herndon Brown. I'm the founder and president of Strategic Admissions Advice. We're an educational company that helps families to navigate the college admissions process. I have known Dana now for 3-ish years.
Yep.
I've always been impressed with your energy in this platform. I appreciate. Tim, I've known for quite a while because I've been in admissions for, I guess, maybe 5 years we met, but I've been in admissions in various capacities. Used to work as a school counselor. Worked in admissions at Georgetown University. I was a director of admissions at another private institution, and now Strategic Admissions Advice has been going for 13 years. So we help families to navigate the college admissions process, and many of us have kids and know people who have kids, and some of us want them to go to college. So we're going to talk about that tonight.
That's right. So it's not just the student.
It's not just, no. I wrote a book too, which is called The Parent's Guide to College Admission Success. And
What's it called?
The Parent's Guide.
So not the chillin'.
Not the children. Although the children are the ones who have to go, parents are so involved with the process at this point, as we learn from the college admission scandal, which I tend to call the criminal enterprise.
The criminal enterprise.
That has nothing to do with college admissions. I was the criminal enterprise. But all that to be said, yes, it's what I've been doing for the better part of 25 years. I'm very happy that I do it. I feel very purposeful as I do it, and I'm happy to talk about it in any capacity that you choose.
Very excited to have you here. Shareem, people are going to be listening to you with bated breath, and they're going to want to know, how can me and my family get some college strategic admissions advice? How can they reach you?
Sure. Always go to inquiry, INQUIRY, at strategicadmissionsadvice.com. That's the best way to get in touch with via email on all social media handles, IG, Facebook, YouTube, just Strategic Admissions Advice. So check us out on all those platforms, and we will get back to you as soon as possible.
What is it that makes strategic admissions advice unique?
So Tim and I actually did a presentation today for the Independent Educators Consultant Association conference. And I think we both agree that what makes admissions universal is that college is still seen as the next stepping stone to education, career. It is what kids should do between the ages of 18 and 24. Strategic admissions advice is particularly unique because I've worked on both sides of the desk, worked in admissions, but also at a high school, and understand that, there are strategies to be employed if you want to maximize your college admission potential. Does that mean that you can manipulate the system? No. Does it mean you can maximize your intentions and demonstrate interest and highlight some things about yourself that could help the admissions process? Absolutely. Tim and I actually driving here. Do you mind if I share the story?
Absolutely.
Tell the story.
Very quickly, we were talking about a very strong student, high performing, high grades, high test scores, and her counselor was very disappointed that she was not admitted to a certain school. After an admissions officer that Tim knows very well read the file on why this girl wasn't admitted, again, great grades, great scores, she only put down one activity on her activity sheet. So
just one activity.
One activity out of 10. You get allotted 10 on your common application. You get 10 opportunities to say, what do you do outside the classroom? Do you do sports? Do you do community service? Do you do art?
For all 4 years of high school?
All 4 years of high school. She said, I sing and I dance.
Sounds like 2 to me.
Whoa, she put it on one. But she put it on
2.
one. So bottom line is that in order to really showcase who you are, what you've done, like Tim said, for 4 years, you have to be more than just grades and scores. How have you contributed to your school, your community, what you're going to contribute to a university?
Well, we're going to give out the number, and then we'll get into some questioning. The phone line. Earl, you ready? I'm giving out your number. The number at Intellectual Radio is 708-223-8953. Once again, 708-223-8953. Serious questions only. Please do not call and figure out how you can get it with all these fine brothers. Please call in if you have legitimate questions regarding the college admissions process and what we're talking about tonight. And while we're waiting for calls to come in, let's talk about the college admissions process.
Yep.
Let's start off with, do you feel like college is still important? And for who and why?
I'm really going to deflect that question to the people who are in higher education or the principals, because they're working with the kids on the ground to get them into college or not. And then, Quincy, do you think as a person in higher education that college is necessary for quote unquote success?
Look at Shireen being Shireen.
I try.
Not quite necessary. I don't know if I would use that term. There are plenty of successful people out here who don't have a college degree, has never set foot on a college campus. However, all the data and literature still point to, if you have a college degree, you tend to make more money over your lifespan. You tend to be a more well-rounded individual. Your networking space seems to be broader because of the people that you've met. And how one scales the career ladder seems to be more at an expedited rate with a college degree and higher education behind you, as opposed to just a high school diploma.
I would add to that I think, they say the idle mind is the devil's workshop. And I think that some students, will say, well, everyone didn't go to college and, that has been successful, but you need to have something to do. You need to have a post-secondary plan. So even if it's not college, it needs to be something, you need to be engaged in some type of meaningful learning activity. And college is generally the next stop for most people where they can do that. And there are so many accessible options to further your education that doesn't require you to spend a lot of money. I used to work at a community college, and you can go there for free and still take courses. I mean, even if you're taking vocational courses, there are a variety of different things that you can do. But I believe when people don't continue or further their education in some meaningful way, that's when you get caught up in a lot of things that you don't want to. And like Quincy said, then you find yourself, your income potential is lower. And then you wake up one day and you're 28 and you're not really skilled or trained to do anything. And then you're feeling like, what am I supposed to do now?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with what everything's been said, but I also would just like to highlight the social aspect that comes with college and getting to know people. And, for the most part, the diversity that a lot of colleges represent, you have to kind of engage with people who have different perspectives, different thoughts, come from different places. I just, think, on a surface level, you could say, okay, Morehouse is all predominantly Black males. So there's kind of one particular school of thought, but that's not true. You got people from nearly every state in the country. You got people coming from multiple countries around the world, people who have different perspectives. So when I came to Morehouse from Dallas, Texas, I didn't know anything about Nas. I didn't know anything about like certain musics from different parts of the world, or like, we were playing craps, and all of a sudden I said, why we got 3 dice? And we only play with 2 where I'm from. And so, I mean, I just think there are just certain social aspects that, being at that during that time that really kind of benefits people. And, there are a lot of programs throughout the country where students are saying, I'm finishing high school with my associate's degree, and I want to come into college with 60 hours, and I want to, be done with college in 2 hours. But at the age of 20, are you really prepared to enter into the workforce?
Right.
Or is there something about?
I needed an extra year. I wasn't ready at
because
22.
it's work out the gate. It's money out the gate. Tuition is no joke. And I talked about this in some of our marketing, with money being a big thing that has changed over time. That's one thing that's been different when we were in school. College is a lot more expensive.
Excuse me, could Emory University, where the two of you work, is how much annually?
Let's just say $70,000.
$70,000. So for
annually,
4 years, so that's $250,000 over 4 years. It's a lot.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
But I would like to say, before I was at Emory, when I still lived here in Chicago, I worked at a high school on the South Side. And, one year we got $45 million in scholarship offers. And it is very possible for people to get money to go to college for free. I have many students that have attended school. They have no bills. I actually had a parent email me recently. Her daughter's graduating. She got a job at IBM in Austin, and she is debt free. And that is very possible, but a lot of families are unaware of that process, because while not only are you navigating the process of getting into college, you also have to navigate that process of funding it. And that in and of itself is a beast.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Also, I think something else that's important is getting parents and students alike to understand what college will actually do for you, right? College is a demonstrated commitment to learning.
Yes.
Right? It's not magic, because even that degree that you get, you're still going to have to make that work for you. Absolutely. You don't get to show up somewhere and say, look, I got this degree. Give me this job, making $75,000 right out the gate. Right. Also, and that's important in getting parents and students and families just to weigh the cost benefit analysis of certain schools, right? Okay, based on what I want to do right now, because you're 18, I didn't know what I wanted to do at 18. Some people were blessed enough to know what they wanted to do. But based on what I want to do, what do I need, right? Because a lot of times too, I think we fall in love with the brand of certain schools. And sometimes
Morehouse.
It's a good brand. It's a good brand. I just want to do.
It's fired.
Yeah.
That threw the man off.
It's all right.
I went to Morehouse for free.
Oh.
Still bullying me. But
no debt, y'all.
But just looking
708.
But looking at what the brand, do you need the brand for what you want to do?
Absolutely.
And so you asked me originally, what is strategic admissions advice? Part of what we do is that we help students to identify their strengths and interests in high school so they can apply to college with a plan. So we strategically want you to go to college to have a clear objective. Now, could that change? Sure. But from an admission standpoint, we feel like it's imperative that you go there not undecided. And we feel like the undecided application just leaves you to be admitted or not into anything. But if you have special talents or gifts, you can highlight that in your application and apply to the right school, whether it's the business, engineering, or science, blah, 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 then yeah, you can have a better chance of getting in because you show initiative and direction and poise. So that is the goal, I think, that most parents want to see out of their young kids before they send them off to college.
At what age should the college planning process begin?
I would say, honestly, 7th grade is when you really want to start having those conversations.
7th grade.
I would go that early. And the reason why I would say that, and you could go before then, but at 7th grade, that's when families need to start looking at the money. Specifically, your income, what can you afford? Are you in a position, to get certain types of funding? If not, what is your contingency plan as far as how you're going to pay for schools so that you can begin managing expectations of the student and what the types of schools they're going to apply to, and then in turn be accepted. I think that's a close enough date range where you can have a sense of where you're going to be financially, but at the same time, you are, having a forethought to plan. So I think that and also your child is formed enough personality wise where you can kind of see, who you're dealing with. I mean, I think earlier than that, you can start having conversations about college, but I think at that point is when you really want to start digging into some real hard conversations. Families wait way too late. And then they come in at 10th, 11th grade, and then they want a miracle maker, and then they give you a list of fantasy schools that they want their students to go to. And it's like, oh, no, ma'am, this isn't real for your child. And sometimes the loss of that list can take too long. And then you end up
because they can't. So what you're saying, the morning of the list, meaning that the reality
exactly
of what their child's real potential is,
absolutely,
in the short amount of time that they have, the short window,
exactly,
is too small. They don't have enough time to recover to get in the game.
Not for what they think they're about to do.
Exactly.
And so I think when you go into high school, because really you want to look at from 7th grade as you start planning for what high school you're going to attend. Also, you're looking at the curriculum that you're going to be taking from the beginning when you start in high school, because that matters. And so
the curriculum matters.
Absolutely.
Well, and we're going to go back to the curriculum. Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to weigh in on the age range? Yes. Does anybody want to talk about kindergarten?
I do. Let me jump in because we're right here. Yeah. And we're going to talk about the word curriculum later for high school. But
yes,
to plug, I actually wrote a curriculum called College Awareness and Admissions.
Okay.
So it's the strategic admissions advice college awareness curriculum specifically for beginning as early as 3rd grade. Mm-hmm. And it's to make kids aware of what college is and what it's intended to be. So by the time we're talking about 7th grade, then we start talking about admission and curriculum and things they need to do in high school. But as early as 3rd grade, I believe that if you make kids aware of where they live, their locale, the schools that are around them, then they can understand that there's a next step after elementary, middle, high school. If you live in Chicago, should you go visit the University of Chicago? Yes. Michelle Obama said in her book, In Becoming, she had never visited the University of Chicago until she went there after law school. But it's right in her city.
She lived down the street. She lived down the street.
Right.
But wasn't even in her city.
Wasn't even aware that it existed. So by making students aware of what they have, again, I'm not talking taking expensive college trips. I'm saying go to Northwestern, go to Champaign.
Check out the schools in your local area.
In your immediate
because
vicinity.
every metropolitan city has schools.
So
that gives you a good barometer. And I don't mean to cut you off.
No.
Kind of.
So it's much more about geography as using it as a catalyst for awareness.
I completely agree. Shareem, how can people reach you?
Yes, please. Inquiry at strategicadmissionsadvice.com or on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Strategic admissions advice.
Strategic admissions advice.
Strategic. You gotta have a plan.
You gotta have a plan, and I think that is incredibly important.
Yes, I'm right. I've had an appointment.
I also think just working in public schools, I just think it needs to start earlier for a couple reasons. Number one, when you're just talking about trajectory, right? Because a lot of kids, I know when I was a kid, I learned and got good grades because I was afraid of my mother, and that's what I was supposed to do, right? But now I think
shouts out to your mom because I know she's watching.
I think students, they think more than we did and think more critically about their future than we did in terms of, all right, why am I doing this, right? I never asked why I need to memorize a Pythagorean theorem. Kids now are like, why do I need to know this? And that's a fair question, right? So with that, they have to be able to attach meaning to what they do at an earlier age, and I think having those conversations, again, I don't think you have to go in depth and go overboard, right? But I do believe in if there's a upward bound program or any kind of day exposure programs, I think as early as possible, because it does give credence to what they're doing every day in the classroom, right? I have this goal, so I need to do this. Additionally, in somewhere like CPS, for example, when you're talking about selective enrollment high schools, right? Those 7th grade test scores is what kind of determines your fate. So you don't want to start then. You want to start before them because let's say the kid doesn't have the best study habits just yet, right? Again, that trajectory. Starting that a little bit earlier. So then by the time they're in 7th grade, a lot of their practices are their habits, right? They're not, it's not raising the bar or anything like that.
I think what I would want to clarify, I guess I say, is I think you need to teach younger children the value of education and learning, period. I think the hardcore conversation about college starts in like that middle school age. But I think talking to a 1st grader about going to college is anything wrong with that, because my mother told me I was going to Spelman since I was 4. Right. But I think that where I have, in my experience of working with young people and working with children, is that they just need to first value education and then see themselves as being someone worthy of having it. And I think sometimes we pile too much on to our kids in the pressure of, I need to go to college. Two reasons. One, my experience working in Chicago Public Schools, I worked at Kenwood Academy for 5 years. I had very college bound students, and I had some kids that did not need to go. Mm-hmm. And I think that there is something to be said about talking about learning and separating learning from college so that students and young people can understand and critically engage the difference between the two. Yep. I think sometimes, especially as a community, we put so much weight on college and we don't put value on learning. So a student that doesn't feel like they're college material then also doesn't feel like they need to continue learning. And
Say
so that
Lindsay.
Is what I think we need to, that's why I say 7th grade for college. But before that, really just express the importance of learning, furthering my education, being a lifetime learning, and what that does for you and your esteem, because a lot of our kids are going into these schools with the imposter syndrome, and that's where they're not completing. And so that's something that we have to kind of be careful about, pushing that college so heavy on these kids, early. And the parents like, I don't have any money for that. So then it's like, well, why am I even talking about this? So it's like we have to be really, sensitive to some of the other things that are happening with some communities that don't have that level of access.
That's my Spelman sister talking, y'all.
and just one, I think, point of clarity. I think there are two different things we need to talk about when we're talking about going to college. I think what we talked about this point was the college preparation, when you should start thinking about it. How's it going to set the tone for your preparation in order to get to the trajectory for whatever school you want to go to? But then the other part is, when should you actually physically start looking at schools?
Yeah.
When you should start the process. And I think that kind of begins somewhere around the 10th grade year, when you seriously want to get kids on college campuses, start looking at schools, be it geography and other things. And then usually a timeline is 10th grade, begin to kind of think about, where would you want to go to school. The summer between, 10th and 11th grade, if you can get on college campuses, begin to look at it. 11th grade, begin to narrow down that list. So by the time you start your senior year, you have an idea of what schools can I realistically get in, what schools do I possibly want to go to, and then you can begin to really focus on that. And then in that fall of your senior year, you can focus on scholarship applications. You can focus on if you need to take some testing one more time, and you're in a better position. But if you don't start that until your 11th or 12th grade year, you're behind the 8 ball. And so my colleague from the high school side can talk more about students taking testing for the first time their senior year and how that.
How bad.
I actually have a student coming to you all, by the way. I'll speak to you all after the show.
Oh, wonderful.
And I think that's one of the huge, inequities in education, about the early bird catches the worm. People who are proactive and take initiative on the front end are usually more successful. When I say successful, they have college options. Right. They're aware of the landscape of what I can get into, what I might not be able to get into, and they're able to apply to a range of schools that then ultimately will satisfy what they want. Versus the kid who comes to you, like you said, your senior year.
Johnny come lately
with the list of unrealistic schools because of the brand, or that's what I heard.
Harvard, Oxford.
Or my auntie told me I should,
right.
Whatever it may be. That's when they find themselves in trouble. And coming from, private school, independent school world, the process starts earlier. They are very cognizant of if you do this now, you'll have success later.
Please share the show, because I think we're sharing some great knowledge and great tips in here. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. We were having a conversation about people visiting our campus, and one of our current students said is basically, we parade rich people around our campus doing tours. And, I really thought about that, but it takes a lot of resources to come to Atlanta on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday during the week to take off. If you're an hourly wage worker, you can't do that. So when I'm talking about visiting campuses, yes, it's good to visit, but I can find out about any college I want to on the web. I can find out, are you big? Are you small? Where are you located?
Yes.
There's a ton of pictures.
There's a ton of pictures, personal tours, what are the majors? So if somebody says, hey, I'm interested in agriculture or architecture at Emory, I'm like, well, we don't have that. You could have found that out on the web. And so I think, yes, it's great to get on a campus, but, do your research. I mean, for all the time people are on their phones and Instagram, social media, to just say, what is it? What is this school what's the makeup? What's the population? What are their most popular majors? What is their demographics of their students? I think those are all important things that students can begin right now.
Tim, as an admissions officer for Emory University, can you talk a little bit about the competitiveness of college in the selective admission space? Because I think one thing people underestimate is how selective, and the applicant pool, right?
Yeah.
Even if you are the top dog.
Yes.
Let's talk about the competitiveness of higher education.
Yeah. So, as Shreem said, we presented today, and one of the things he brought up is there are over 3,500 college or universities throughout the United States. And, a whole lot of people became fixated on those top 25, which we
top 25
out of 35, over 3,500.
3,500 universities, colleges and universities across the country.
Correct.
We're not even talking about international,
no.
Right?
Yeah.
We're talking about within the United States, 3,500, and people are focused on the top
20, let's say 25 or 30,
right?
But it's really that top 30 list.
I gotta get into.
And if we all said let's make a list,
Number
we
one.
all would have those schools. And so rankings don't really have anything to do with the individual experience. So if we get into what is a ranking on the U.S. News and World Report say, it has to deal with endowment, it has to do with faculty, it has to deal with all sorts of other things that don't have anything to do with your kind of daily experience as a student. But, just kind of looking at these tools, we, in our office, we say, selective college admission means we can choose who we want to. So at Emory, we had over 30,000 applications this year.
For how many slots?
1,350.
Yes.
Say that again.
30,000 applications to make a class of 1,350. And our admit rate was 17%.
15,
excuse me. Thank you. So
What's your yields?
We're still working on it.
Yes.
Correct.
Coming soon.
Still be working. So, and that's Emory, and we are number 20. All
As
right.
per U.S. News and World
As
Report.
per U.S. News and World Report, it fluctuates anywhere from 19 to 22, depending upon what's going on. But if you go all the way to the Harvards, the Stanfords, the Yales, the Princetons, their admit rate is under 7%.
Under 7%. And so that's one of the messages that I want to drive home, because a lot of people, we're talking about giving advice for people to get in just to be competitive and hopefully ahead of the game, right? But even if you have the great scores, you've got the great extracurricular activities, you've got more than one extracurricular activity besides choir on your application, right? Even then, that doesn't necessarily guarantee you a spot in some of these top schools, right? Because you're competing against people with identically competitive applications
throughout the entire world. Right. So throughout the entire world.
Correct.
So, that's one of the things to really think about
How
is
easy it is to apply now with electronic applications.
Say that again.
How easy it is. I don't mean to cut you off, man. But it's so easy now to apply to college with electronic applications that people who have no business applying to some of those schools are inflating their numbers of applications by saying, "Oh, what do I have to lose? I have nothing to lose."
I can just basically I can just click this button
and pay $70.
Pay $70 to add additional schools. With very little additional work.
You can have straight D's and apply to Harvard.
But I would want to say this, at least for my pool of students that I had to read this year, by and large, 70% or more of the students that I had a 3.5 or better GPA in high school.
Say that again, Lindsay.
I said at least 70% of my students had a 3.5 or better GPA. I had very few applications that were students where you were like just looking at the just general metrics, looking at the numbers, although we read beyond that were not competitive and admissible. It was really a very small portion of our pool. And even looking from the Midwest, I would say the same. I think a lot of these students are actually competitive applying to these schools in a lot of ways by numbers. But what really separates the student is beyond the numbers. And I think that's what Timothy is really trying to say, is that, there are a lot of students that have 5.0s, 1600.
She said 5.0s.
No, that's real. Yeah, you can have a 5.0.
Yeah.
There are schools that don't even have numbers. They have a narrative.
Yes.
And so, but I think one of the other parts to, one of our hardest times of the year is when decisions are released and parents are calling like, why did my student get accepted? And you're like, your student did everything they possibly could. It's just 30,000 applications for 1,350 spots. And you had taken into consideration, we want students from all 50 states. We want students from international. We need students from all different, academic interests. We want to look at geographic diversity. We want to look at racial diversity, ethnic diversity, cultural diversity. We have, legacy kids. We have people who want to be part of our arts program. We have people who debate. And the list goes on and
it's like
on
fishing.
and on.
You can't catch them all.
No, you can't. You can't.
You can't. So let's talk about what the type of applicant is that stands out to you in the admission space, or that stands out to you in the high school space, in the college space, when people are already in. What's the type of applicant that you feel like is ideal or demonstrates some of these qualities? Mind you, this is no guarantee that you're getting in these schools, but these are some of the qualities that are valued both at the beginning, in the application process, in the admissions process, and then actually once you're in school. What's hot in the streets?
I'll say first and foremost, be more than your numbers. And I think, we're alluding to that the metrics can't be your only saving grace. You have to do a lot outside the classroom, and not just to be admitted to college. Let me say this very clearly. I'm not saying, do things just so Tim can think that you're a good applicant. Do things because you want to contribute to your school, because you want to contribute to your community, because you have interests outside of the classroom. So people who are not necessarily well-rounded, because schools are looking for a well-rounded class, not necessarily a well-rounded kid, but you have to be someone who takes an investment in themselves and in their education, and just trying to be the best you in a variety of capacities. And even then, you won't necessarily get admitted, but whether it's your essay, your essays, plural, your activities, possibly an interview, demonstrating interest, there are many, many factors that go into their decision-making that they'll tell you about. And it just takes you giving maximum effort in all those areas.
I think the word that I would say is impact. I think it's putting in the effort, making sure that you're doing your best, but contextually, are you making an impact on your community? Be it your local community? Is it your school community? Is it your family? Is it all of the above? But are you making some type of impact? I think students that even don't have the metrics necessarily, but have the impact, are the applications that we'll take a second look at and say, well, can we make a case for this student because we see the impact that they're making and we believe in the potential that they have? A lot of times what students don't do is that they don't, as Tim will say, this isn't the time to be humble. They don't give themselves the credit on the applications, like the young lady who only put down she was in the choir. There are opportunities and spaces where that young lady might be doing more, but she's not selling herself well. And so as a result, we as a committee can't read the application and just glean from one activity that you have maximum impact in your context. Because a student that is in an under-resourced area is not going to have the same outlets that someone that is not. And so we're not going to say how many activities, but is the impact there?
What I'll add to that is when I see a student's maturity matching their academic scores. So these are students who, I went to Morehouse and I got there at 18 years old. And my classmates were already strategic thinkers. They read books that were outside of what the classroom asked them to do. They were already really good writers. Mathematics somewhat came easy to them when the rest of us were studying like our lives depended on it. And there was an ease and a relaxed disposition to them that when they approached school, it was as if they were 27 and not 18. And they were there when they got there, when they first set foot on campus. When I see a student like that, when I see an applicant like that, I know they're going to go far because they're already there.
They're already there.
And I mean, when you say, what are we looking for? It depends on the school. And I want to go back to this number of 3,500 different schools. And so, I mean, we can talk about what we kind of look at in this selective world, but that's not the same thing that, the large public schools are going to look for, the community colleges are going to look for. There are different things. And I think that's where it's important for students to really think about, what are the schools and places that I can see myself at? And then, a lot of times you can see based upon that school and that environment, then that can kind of dictate what's a good applicant for that school. Because, we read a lot of applications and we can read it and like, this person is not a good fit for our school. This person should go to another school and be successful. Or we can read it very like, you know what, this person will thrive in our environment based upon what's in there. But, you know, I think it's really important for students to kind of go about like thinking about those things and not really, you know, their parents handing them a list. And I do just a quick plug. I think, you know, if any students are listening to it, but especially parents, let the students drive this process. Too many times.
How so? In what way?
As far as filling out the application, as far as communicating with the school, as far as advocating for themselves. Like
so you advocate for students themselves to call and to reach out and to be engaged, as opposed to parents. Because a lot of times parents were like, oh, no, Johnny or little Kareem, you know.
I mean, but
I should call because I'm the parent, I'm the grown up, I'm the adult. You really feel like it should be the student.
But parents will be on the campus.
But it goes as far
Becky
as somebody will
or Kimberly's mom should pick up the phone and call.
No, it'll go as far as somebody will come up to check in for a tour, and the mother will say, yes, you know, I'm here for Timothy Fields. And like, he's right back there. He can't check in himself. And that's just kind of a very microcosm of this whole process of people like, hey, you know, Tim is in, you know, he's playing soccer right now. He couldn't call. So I will, you know, can you answer these questions? If they don't try and disguise their voice. Like there are people who call like, you sound 50 years old. Why are you trying to like say you're 18-year-old? Like, but I think students have emails. Students have the ability to do all sorts of other things as far as networking, but they really should drive this process.
You know, and I want to piggyback on it in two areas. One, I want to agree with you 100% that this process should be, operative word, should be driven by students. It's their education, it's their time, it's their interest.
It's their life.
It's their life.
However,
we're in an age of helicopter parenting, as we saw, you know, with this whole criminal enterprise / college admission scandal, which the parents are the ones getting penalized for hiring someone to falsely, you know, either take tests or impersonate their kids on an application. Parents' identity is too wrapped up into this process. Let's get this clear. All right. You are not a failure as a parent if your kid doesn't go to one of the top 25 or 30 schools. 3,500 schools, your kid's no guarantee to be a quote unquote success if they go to one of those 25 or 30. So let your kid figure out where they should be going. I'm also a parent, real talk. And I know that I have to let my kid lead his life. But I also know that if I don't light a little bit of a match under it, he's not to where I believe he can get. And that may sound like, you know, then let him land where he's supposed to. No. I got too much invested in him, money, time, and love, that I want to support him and help him to fly. Maybe that's my fault on the front end, but here we are. And at 14 years old, I want my son to have college options. So I help him to be aware, to understand the admissions process, as I think all parents should, so that ultimately their kids can have options and land where they're supposed to. So I think it's 80% the kid, but I think the parents got to be involved, because if you take your hands off the steering wheel, your kid will crash.
I didn't say that they didn't need to be involved, but it needs to be clear who is leading.
Who's the applicant? Right. Who is the applicant?
I think it's kind of like Mr. Miyagi and Daniel's son.
Wax on.
Daniel is the one fighting the fight, but Mr. Miyagi is right there on the side. And I think the parents need to have that level of, you know, wax on, wax off. I'm going to give you the training. I'm going to give you this wisdom. I'm going to give you this knowledge. But when it's time to actually engage, it has to be the student. And I think, you know, from coming from my high school experience, you know, parent support, the students that had strong parental support are my students that I knew could get there faster than like the other little things that you need parents for to get all of this complete. You know, that parental support is valued. But at the same time, some students didn't know how to call the school and ask if they had received their transcript.
They just don't know what to do because they're young.
You need to have a student needs to be able to know how to engage an office of admission, a registrar, a financial aid office on the phone, how to dial a phone, you know, and so things like that, you know, students, and I agree with Tim that they do need to be able to take charge in that way.
And just to add to that, I think the parents need to provide the push the whole time, right? The parents are there for the checks and balances. So if there's something that's due that the kid needs to do, It's not about the parent doing it. It's about, hey, what do you do? No, get to do this. When you're talking about applying for scholarships, again, it's those checks and balances. Then when you're, you know, before you submit the application, well, let me check over it and make sure it checks out. No, this isn't right because XYZ, you know, do it again. You know, I don't think it's a hands-off thing, but the kids have to take the most impactful action steps, I do believe, have to be taken by the student, while the parent provides the checks and balances and the feedback, right? I think parents also need to challenge their students instead of, like you said, driving where they want to apply. Parents need to challenge their students. Okay, you want to go here. Why? Right? I had a question for them real quick.
Go ahead.
Cool.
No doubt.
In you all's experience of higher education, do you find that the student, okay, let's say the metrics check out, right? Do you find that the students who are most self-aware and can really articulate why the school is a fit, do you find that they have a higher rate of acceptance?
No.
So, I mean, that implies that there's some kind of demonstrated interest that the school is interested in. But I will say the first part, that students who are more self-aware and can present themselves, and you have a good understanding of who they are once you complete that application, yes, those students probably are admitted at a higher rate, because a lot of students, they just kind of they say what you think we want to hear.
Right.
And in an applicant pool of 30,000, they're not going to stand out. And so Lindsay and I were in a committee together. We looked at all the applications from the Midwest, from Wisconsin all the way down to Texas. And at the end, we were not looking at numbers. We were looking at who is this person. And we had some laughs, and we had some serious conversations about who this person is. And there were a lot of students that just the other day that like had metric. We're talking 4.0s, 35s, 1580s. And then he's like, this is a flat application. There's nothing here. Like, you take these numbers away, I don't know who this person is. I don't know what the type of impact of this person. I don't even know what they're going to add to this community we have here. So we're going to leave them where they're at.
And that's the thing. Like, what I've gleaned from what you've said is that the statistics, the numbers get you in the door, right? The strong academic GPA, the test scores, right, bring you to the table. But from there, it's what you do with that.
The only flip side of that is that even the kids who are self-aware but don't have good grades and good scores, but they know themselves, they're not getting a second look either.
It depends.
But let's be very clear that a selective school, a kid can be philosophical, can understand, in touch with their emotional side, but if they got a D in chemistry in a sophomore year, they're not getting it. I do not think that they're going to be admitted to a highly selective institution. And again, I could be wrong. So I think we need to be very clear that enrollment management and the expectations of the Board of Trustees of many private institutions have a certain criteria, and they want to hear the metrics. They're not reading the application essay. So I appreciate, and again, as an educator to my core, holistically, I want those kids to succeed and to be self-aware and prepared to be successful in college and beyond. But in this capitalistic society that is run by numbers, the piece of that trickles down into education.
I would just want to throw one thing about the D. All D's are not created equal. And what I mean by that, all D's, like a grade, D is not created equal. I can think of some situations right now where,
like right now,
and he knows exactly
because
what I'm talking about.
Because of FERPA, we can't use names, but we know the name.
Right, where admitted, with these types of grades. But
you're welcome, student.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
You're welcome. You call somebody on a good day.
The reason why I think that all D's are not created equal is because what was happening with the D. Because everyone's D, I'm lazy, I tricked off my time because I was eating bonbons and playing PlayStation. That's one student. But D, because I'm living in a war zone and I have all of this going on, and there's a lot of different particular things that are happening in my particular situation that caused me to have this D. But now by my junior year, I've pulled my science grade up to a B. And by my senior year, I'm in AP chemistry and I'm doing well. That is a totally different student.
Can we comment a little bit on the international play? Because I think a lot of times domestically, people, students, and parents don't realize they're competing on an international level. Like you said, there's some students who, didn't make the field hockey team. And there's other students who are living in a war zone, right?
Right.
And
domestically and internationally.
Right. And true, very true. And those personal statements, those personal essays, I think are very telling with respect to the applicant. And I think coloring the stage with respect to students who come to institutions or go to institutions internationally and how that affects the process.
I think just at least from context at Emory, the people that read internationally are you're supposed to be the expert of your territory, so you understand what that looks like, what that means, how counselors communicate. Counselors in South Korea, they write their recommendation letters, no fluff. It's like, student is all right, thank you, versus American, recommendation letters are going to be written differently. So those people are very aware of what and who they're reading in the context of what that is. And so I think that helps in that applicant pool process. But I think, it also still looks at how is the student going to fit in this area. I think, but if it's a smaller school that has less resources, that how they know their territory might shift.
Anybody else?
Well, I mean, international is within higher education. It's a hot button topic because there are several parts of international students, and it's one. There are a large segment that students are taking international students because they have to pay the full freight. So most international students that or more,
Right.
most international students who are going to college or university in the United States, they're not going to receive any aid. They are going to have to pay that whole amount. And so
that offset some of the financial aid for domestic students.
Absolutely. So that's one part of international students. And then when you say international, depending upon where you're at, it's not international, it's 3 countries. So then is if you're talking about the international population, is it truly international, or is it just South Korea, China, and India? So really, I think different schools are at different places, and they're trying to pull from these students. And then also at the secondary level, there are a lot of boarding schools that are staying open because they're bringing international students in to kind of pay the full amount of tuition. And so there's one narrative that, okay, these schools aren't going to take students from mainland China, but if I have my student go to high school for 3 years in the United States and international students, they have a better chance. And so there's a whole lot of, kind of, for lack of a better term, chess being played as far as international students.
And strategic?
It's very strategic. Very strategic.
How can we find strategic admissions advice?
strategicadmissionsadvice.com. We have a ton of resources. I was going to say that, like, some of the tips and tricks and tools that
tricks.
No, that's what you said. I did.
That is what you said.
I did.
Yes, honey. If you want to know,
tips and tools that you can use to help your college process. There are no tricks. It's just tips and tools for the college process. I did say that.
And there are some questions that have come in. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I promise you that our panel will take a look. I'll direct them to taking a look at all the questions that have been posed online and answer those questions. And certainly they'll be able to reach all of you directly if they choose as well. And we'll definitely facilitate those. We talked about how parents can be very involved in the college admission process of their kids. And I think that has a lot to do with their own personal experience. Are you all satisfied with your collegiate experience?
Quite.
Very much so. I know I went to Spelman and I thoroughly enjoyed my collegiate experience. And I think that shapes kind of how I see the college admissions process for my own kids and the future.
I'm the only person here that didn't go to Morehouse or Spelman, so I'll speak to this.
Where did you go to
I
school?
went to Wesleyan University in Middle.
Sorry for the interference.
Oh no, all good. No, I appreciate all of y'all for going to HBCUs, and believe me, it was an afterthought for me, and that as an adult, I probably wish I would have experienced at the time. I'm glad I went to where I did, primarily because, as Tim said, the relationships. I did not take full advantage of the educational experience. My bad. But the relationships that I gained there, the friendships, I value those tremendously. That was worth $250,000. I don't know, but I do appreciate my friends and the people that I met there, and that have helped me become the person I am today. And I like that person.
I think that's so fascinating because one thing we didn't talk about was why students go where they go. I'm always fascinated by how a young brother from the west side of Chicago ends up at a school with 2,000 white people.
Dartmouth.
And they're the only black person there. How did that school get him? And how did they convince him to go to a place so foreign to him where no one looks like him?
A lot of times I think it's money.
It's the
Prestige,
money.
money.
Yes.
Money.
But it's it's other things.
But there are other things.
So
Options.
Some of the other things that play too, though,
There's so
are
many options.
And I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole on this necessarily, but depends on that student's perspective about themselves and their community and where they're from, right?
Yes.
Because there are a lot of I don't know what I can say.
You can say it. Go ahead. So just say it.
There are certain, for instance, there are certain charter networks, right, that will teach students, hey, it's something wrong with where you're from. You need to assimilate to where I'm thinking, to our way of thinking. So then as a result, they excel, but then they look at their community like, that's broken. I don't want to be associated with anything that looks like that.
Yeah.
In addition to that, there are students who have, who haven't, their only exposure to other Black students, if you're talking about, an African-American male or female. And they've been in a context where they see people like them that look like them struggling all the time. And they project that on the rest of the world. If you look like me, you're probably bad off. So I want to be successful. So I need to get away from anything that looks like me. I've had a lot of students when I was in Florida to say, well, I don't want to go to an HBCU because it's going to be just like this high school part 2. And I'm like, no, that's not the case.
Well, that's not the real world.
And I have a kid right now that's at Morehouse, that's my valedictorian in Florida, who's excelling. He's like, oh man, you were right. Because he didn't see diversity.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but a lot of times we don't see diversity within each other.
That's huge.
But the other part of
say that again
is that they don't realize that the state school is really less diverse in a lot of cases than the HBCU. And I used to tell my students at Kenwood all the time, if you go to U of I, where you're going to probably end up hanging out with most of the Black people and where they're all going to be from, Chicago. So it's going to be Chicago South. However, if you go to Howard, then you're dealing with a whole contingency of Black people from all over the country and all over the world. So now you're having a whole different diverse experience. And that is really what diversity is. And they don't see that.
They don't
and
see
the
it.
parents don't see that.
No, they don't. And
you just spoke a word,
and
even though you mentioned Howard.
Guidance counselors that don't see that.
Well, I mean, we already know Spelman is number one.
I appreciated you making that diverse.
That is our African American students who are in high school that are all white. Their experience is like, you know what? I think I want to go and be with some Black people.
Right.
And then they go to an HBCU.
Yeah.
Yes.
I find that fascinating that it's flipped that way.
Well, we're running out of time. And I just want to thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank
for having
you.
us.
This has been amazing. I appreciate it. Shareem, can you tell us once again where people can reach you? Because I think this is a great conversation with respect to college admissions and admissions advice.
No worries. I really appreciate the opportunity. Please check us out at strategicadmissionsadvice.com or inquiry@strategicadmissionsadvice.com.
And if you'd like to reach anybody, please reach out to me or you can follow them. They've been tagged all week with respect to the show. I do want to give a little plug to the homecomingchallenge.com. That is our Go Back, Give Back campaign. Many of these people have participated in the Homecoming Challenge and are all supporters of the Homecoming Challenge.
Yes.
And we are now a nonprofit. We're gearing up for our new season in starting August 1st. So we're super excited about all that is to come. Please join us. Visit www.homecomingchallenge.com. I want to thank all of our sponsors, Shareem with Strategic Admissions Advice, Sandy Hernandez, Jill Whitwer, Veronica's House of Glamour, Ray Design Company, Janelle's Bling Things, Social MVP, and Scene Chicago. Next week, once again, we're going to Aurelio's. Next Thursday, we're watching the pilot episode of Dana Being Dana coming to Naperville Community Television. We're super excited. We're going to have a great time. DJ Cheech Beats, Morehouse College alum, class of 98.
Class of 98.
He is the resident DJ, one of two, I would say, resident DJs of Morehouse, class of 98. And he will be spinning in Naperville. We're going to have a great time. Come on out, have a great time. Tantalize your ears and your eyes as we jam out to some 80s and 90s music and watch the pilot episode for television of Dana Being Dana. Next week, before that, we have our last episode before the TV pilot. We are talking about a very relatable topic. It's going to be a 2-part series next week. The first of which is parenting, featuring dads. We've got a great program lined up for you. Goldfish Swim School of Naperville and Janelle's Bling Things are our featured sponsors. It's going to be a ton of fun. Once again, dads are up first. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in. I do not promise to be an expert, nor do I have all the answers. I'm just Dana Being Dana. Good night.